In this video, I'm going to give you a new trick, a new thing you can do to build self-control. Because when it comes to becoming more self-controlled, we often hear the same advice time and time again. 1. Change your environment. When there's less temptations in your environment, it takes more effort or it's more difficult for you to act in a way that's inconsistent to what you desire most, giving you more self-control. 2. Shift your focus. Everything in life has a positive and a negative side to it. It's the side we choose to focus on that becomes amplified in our life, making us desire it more. For example, working out. There's benefits to working out, such as you look stronger and feel stronger, and there's also negatives to working out, such as it takes more time and effort and energy out of your day. But when I focus on the positive of working out, the benefits of it become amplified in my life, making me desire to choose that option more and giving me more energy and more self-control towards the outcome. And third is changing my identity, because when I become the person who works out, become the person who eats right and studies, when I become that person, it's going to be easier for me to have the self-control to act in alignment with that person I believe I am, because that's who I see myself as. And these three things hit all three areas of our life. The external, our environment, hits what goes on outside of us. The internal is our focus, how we choose what thoughts we have, how we master our thoughts. And third is our identity that shapes our beliefs, who we see ourselves as. So we hit all three areas. That's why this advice, though it's so often said, is so important to live out, because when we live it out, we will have self-control. The only problem is we don't live this out. Otherwise, we wouldn't need this video. We would all have self-control. That's why this video is so important, because it gives you a different frame for self-control. And sometimes to learn the same lesson, we have to frame it a different way. And that's the point of this video. So what is this trick that I'm talking about that will help you to build self-control? Well, this trick is something I call narrative. Narrative is the story you believe based upon the story you see. What we see often shapes our beliefs. For example, I like playing basketball, and if someone missed 10 layups in a row and I saw them miss it, well, guess what? The story I'm going to tell myself about them and believe about them is that they suck at basketball because of what I see about them. So even if afterwards they go up to me and say, man, I scored 20 points a game in college, I was All-American, I was great at basketball, well, I'm going to tend to believe what I see more than what I hear, because what I see is a greater principle than what I hear. I like to say it like this: the most preeminent principle is the principle that prevails. For example, if you have two people right next to each other, one of them's healthy, one of them's sick, well, the sick person is more likely to make the healthy person sick than the healthy person to make the sick person healthy. Why? Because the person's sickness is a greater principle than another person's health. It's the same way for our sight and our hearing. Our sight is more preeminent. It's a greater principle than what we choose to hear. So we have to master what we see, because when we see is inconsistent with what we hear, we're going to believe what we see. And that's not just the case with our eyesight and what goes on outside of us, it's also the case with our insight and what goes on inside of us. Insight is awareness from reflection. When we think about ourselves, we get awareness from that thinking, giving us insights about ourselves. And the thing about thinking is our thoughts are not just words, but they're also pictures. We can see ourselves doing something. We can have expectations and visualization towards a future outcome. And that thing that we see inside of ourselves, those insights, tend to be the narrative that we believe about ourselves. So if I'm playing basketball and I imagine myself making 10 free throws in a row, well, that story that I see from my insight becomes the narrative I believe about myself. Man, I'm a good free throw shooter. So now I can have actions that are in alignment with that belief and actually have more confidence when I step up into the line to shoot free throws, because of the narrative I choose to believe about myself. And that's the same way with our self-control. If we see ourselves, imagine ourselves eating healthy foods, imagine ourselves going to sleep on time, wake up on time, having the self-control to study and do right, when we imagine ourselves doing that, we have greater belief and confidence towards those actions because of the narrative we're choosing to believe about ourselves. That's the power of narrative. See, like I said, there's three things in life: external, internal, and our beliefs. And narrative hits all three. It hits the external because our eyesight changes our beliefs. It hits the internal because our insight also changes our beliefs. And our belief, because it changes our beliefs, our perception shifts what we believe. So mastering our narrative can shift our beliefs in a positive way, making us have actions that are in alignment with those beliefs, giving us more self-control towards what we desire. The trick I'm talking about is your self-talk, mastering what you say about yourself. Because when you change what you say to yourself, you can change what you see about yourself and thus the narrative you choose to believe, shifting your self-control to act in that way. The thing is, many people use their self-talk in ways that are destructive towards having self-control. For example, one thing I sometimes do is before going to social media, I tell myself, hey, one video. Or, hey, I'm just going to check my likes and check my subs and comments, whatever. So as I tell myself that and I go on social media, a greater principle tends to prevail. And that's the principle of momentum. An object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by outside force. So when I'm watching that one video I told myself I'm going to watch, well, I swipe and I swipe and I swipe and momentum takes over. So then now I'm going to continue to act in that way because the principle of momentum is greater than the principle of discipline and self-control in that moment. And because it's preeminent, it's going to prevail until an outside force comes and overcomes it. And what's that outside force that has to come? It's often our self-talk, what we say about ourselves and what we say about social media. When I'm on social media just scrolling and momentum's taking over, if I tell myself, man, I hate social media, man, I have to do something else, I have work I need to do. When I change my self-talk, I change what I see and the narrative about what I'm doing. And I tend to believe, hey, social media is a problem. I have to get off of it. And it's going to give me the self-control to now act in that way. Because of my self-talk, I have a greater principle than the principle of momentum. So your self-talk is usually the greatest principle. We master that, we have more self-control. But what if instead of having self-talk be the principle after we're on social media, we use it before we go on social media or before we're tempted by whatever we tend to be tempted by, whether it's alcohol or drinks or video games or whatever it may be. We can use our self-talk, the narrative we tell about ourselves, to have the self-control not to gauge those actions before the law of momentum takes over and we're already engaging in what we know we shouldn't do. We can say things like, hey, I hate drinking. Hey, I hate going to social media. Hey, I don't want to do this. By telling ourselves that, guess what? We're building dread towards that option. Dread is the energy we get from having a bad expectation. So if I tell myself, man, if I drink this alcohol, I'm going to feel fat, I'm going to gain weight, I'm going to miss out on my goals. Well, all these bad expectations is building energy against doing that. And because of that narrative we're telling about ourselves, we're going to believe that the thing we do instead is a greater option than having the alcohol. We're going to desire the other option more. By simply changing our self-talk, we can have energy towards a different option, which gives us the desire and the self-control towards doing the outcome. That's what we have to master. Along with having bad expectations and having dread towards things, we can also build self-control by having empowering expectations. When we look at the benefits of having self-control, such as we reach our goals and the outcomes we can get, well, when we focus on that, when we see that in our minds, we can have a different narrative we tell ourselves, giving us beliefs and actions towards the outcome. For example, if my goal was to make the NBA, I can have insights and see in my mind what happens when I make the NBA. Well, I'm going to have all success and fame and money. Well, as I see that in my mind, as I play that out in my mind, the narrative I tend to believe is that, hey, this is possible. So that gives me greater desire and energy and self-control to do the actions necessary for me to reach that goal because I'm looking at the positive side and I see the benefits of it. It's just like our focus, like I said in the second example of building self-control. When you focus on the positive, you become aware of its benefits, giving you self-control to live it out. It's the same way with our narrative. But instead of having to see the positive, we can just envision the positive. We envision what happens when we reach our goals, when we get married, when we make the MBA, when we have success that we want. When we envision that, it changes our beliefs about that thing, giving us self-control towards it. So that is what we need to master. Master dread. Have energy against the outcomes you don't want. If you don't want to eat a certain food, you want to have self-control not to do so, well, tell yourself, man, I hate this food. Man, this food will make me fat. This food will make me stay away from my goals. It's not going to let me help me. So that's a trick to have more self-control. Master your narrative, what you believe based upon what you see. If I see dread and negative expectations towards something, such as, hey, if I eat this cake, I'm going to get fat, and I vision what happens when I get fat in my mind, well, that's going to make me have a desire not to do that thing, and thus more self-control to not do it. Same way, if I see myself working now and eating healthy, well, I can envision that happening in my mind, how strong I'm going to be, how wise I'm going to be. As I envision that gives me beliefs towards that outcome, a greater desire for it, and self-control to do that option. So narrative hits all three. It hits your external, your internal, and most importantly, your beliefs about yourself, the person you become, because you can see the person you become when you change your narrative about yourself. So do that, master your self-talk, you have more self-control. And if you want to learn more about how self-control can benefit you in life, read this book. It's called Controlling the Controllables, How Anyone Can Become Influential. And it teaches you how self-control, controlling what you can control in life, will make you have more influence on other people. Because when I control what I can control, I influence others to also control what they can control in life, helping them to get better results. So change your narrative, and it'll also make you more influential. If you want to learn more about becoming more self-controlled and disciplined, I post videos 1 or 2 times a week about that on my channel. So check it out. Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment, and I'll see you next one.